Hi guys, Miss Chronister here again. Hopefully you guys are getting through the reading. This reading that we just had was a huge chunk, but it was kind of like the meat of the book. We've got the trial here, and we saw that unfold. But before we talk about the trial, I want to talk about a few other things we saw. So Jem at the beginning of this and kind of all throughout, he's been hounding Scout about acting more grown up. He's like put himself in this superior role, telling her what to do and saying, oh, I know you can't understand that because you're not old enough yet. So Jem is kind of growing and maturing. But Scout's going to do her own growing and maturing. She's just not at Jem's spot quite yet. So as we continue to read, she's going to start growing. Part of growing, and you guys have an assignment on this, is looking at things from other people's perspective. And Scout kind of starts doing that as the kids go to church with Calpurnia, right? So instead of going to their church, instead of Cal dropping them off there, she takes them to the black church, which is a different experience for them, and they kind of get to see things from a different perspective. They find out, for example, that most of the people there can't read. So that was a huge realization for Scout, seeing Zebo doing the lining where he reads the line and the rest of the church congregation sings it back to him. And they do that because they can't read. So Scout's starting to see things from other people's perspective, which might kind of be a theme in this novel as well. So as you go through that assignment and you take a closer read at chapter 12, think about that. Think about how that plays into Scout's coming of age. Also, Dill comes back. So they've got this, I like how Harper Lee does this because they've got this heavy trial that is coming down on them this summer. But Dill comes back, and Dill's kind of like this reminder of their childhood. So he kind of, in the midst of this really heavy situation, she has her childhood friend back. And so he's kind of a reminder of the good old days. And so one night, Atticus does something really weird. He goes down to the jail, and the kids follow him. Scout, Jem, and Dill follow him. And they see a mob coming to kill Tom Robinson. Tom Robinson has been transported back to Maycomb to await his trial the next day, and a group of men want to kill him before he even has a chance at the trial, before they even know anything that's happening, before they hear what's going to be said at the trial. They want to kill him. It's a sign of the times again. So Atticus goes there to protect him, and you have an assignment about kind of the jail and what it looks like, how it compares to the rest of the town. It's definitely different. The looks of the jail and the mood about the place is much darker than the rest of the town, which is fitting because it's a jail, and we're about to see this really dark situation take place with the men coming to kill Tom. Also think, again, who should be protecting Tom Robinson at the jail? It should be the sheriff. But just like the sheriff should have shot the dog to protect the community, Atticus did that. Just as the sheriff should be protecting Tom, it's his job to uphold the law. Atticus is doing it. So again, Atticus is kind of stepping up to do the right thing. Maybe we can kind of make a text-to-self connection. Sometimes we see people who should be upholding the rules and reinforcing what is right, and they don't. So that is an opportunity for us all to stand up and do what's right ourselves, right? So they see what's happening. This mob comes, and Scout, Jem, and Dill run up. And the mob wants Atticus to send his children home because they intend to kill Tom, and they don't want to do that in front of children. And Jem flat out refuses. This is Jem knows what's going on. Scout and Dill don't really know what those men are here to do, but Jem does. Jem's older. He understands. The author's made a point to show us how he's growing up. And this is kind of a point where he asserts himself. He defies his father, which is very unlike Jem, but he doesn't defy his father or disobey his father to disobey his father because he doesn't want to. He's standing there because he wants to make sure Atticus doesn't get hurt. He is standing there because it's the right thing to do. And he's kind of like following in Atticus's footsteps in a way right here. This is kind of like a father and son moment where Jem stands up, and the kids even, I think, or the adults, I think, even grabbed Jem and was like, I'll send him home, and Scout sticks up for her brother by kicking the man a little higher than she intended to. So anyway, the kids hold their ground. And the children are kind of what dissolves this mob. The children are the ones, Atticus says later, that Scout made those men stand in his shoes, walk around in his skin. Theme from our story, right? Scout kind of brings the whole situation down to earth when she talks to Mr. Cunningham about Walter, about him being her friend. And, hey, will you say hey to Walter for me? So this kid, Scout, even though she doesn't realize how big this situation is, she makes it smaller by reminding Mr. Cunningham that he has a kid, that Atticus is standing here with his children. And so by making that connection, I love how connection is what diffuses this situation. By making that connection, by reaching out and talking to somebody about their kid and reminding them of who they really are, she encourages him and gives him the strength to say, let's go. He realizes that he's in front of kids. He realizes that he has his own kid, his own child. He realizes his humanity for a moment. He realizes that he's not a part of this mob. Mob, we've all heard of mob mentality, where you get hyped up and you do things you wouldn't normally do in a mob because you feed off of the anger and the hatred of everybody else. Scout has brought it back to something smaller and more positive by reminding him that he's a dad, reminding him that Atticus is a father here in front of his children. So it takes a child sometimes to remind us of what's important, and they certainly did that. And there's another instance in this huge chunk of reading where a child has a bigger realization than adults. So let's shift. Let's go to the trial. We see Bob Ewell. What a piece of work he is, right? So he's like being sarcastic on the stand and acting like he's all high and mighty, and then he gets questioned by Atticus, and we find out that he is left-handed. And then Mayella Ewell comes on the stand, and we really start to feel sorry for Mayella, right? Atticus paints a picture of what her life is like, and Scout says, man, I thought Boo was lonely. Mayella must be the most lonely person in the whole wide world. We can infer from the text that she is possibly, that she's beaten by her dad, she's possibly molested by her father, she takes care of all these kids, she went to school for 2 or 3 years, her life is miserable, it's awful. So hopefully your heart went out to her. But then you're reading that she's accusing Tom Robinson, this innocent man, and so even though you feel sorry for her, you have to stop feeling sorry for her, because she's, you can't pity somebody who's like hurting somebody else when she hurts Tom Robinson by accusing him of doing something he didn't do. So I certainly feel sorry for Mayella, but I wish she would just stand up for what's right. And then there's Tom. So we see Tom. Remember, we're talking about the name of the book is To Kill a Mockingbird, and mockingbirds are these just innocent people who do nothing but good. Talk about Tom. He, for years that he's walked by the Ewell place, has helped Mayella. He has been kind to her, had conversations. He was her only friend, basically. In her world where she had nobody, he was her one somebody. He did nothing but good. And now she's accusing him of raping her. So we see the evidence, right? Tom can't even use his left hand. There's no way he could have beaten Mayella about the right side of her face, like they're saying. Clearly it was Bob who did it. Atticus lays it out. He says it's black and white in his final argument. And it really is black and white, and there's a double meaning there. It's a black man versus a white man, and it's like as clear as day who the real perpetrator is, who the real criminal is. So we see that. And as Tom is talking to the other lawyer, he's being cross-examined, right? Dill gets sick. So they have to leave. Dill is so, it's so difficult for Dill to see how poorly Tom is being treated, that he can't handle it. He's physically ill. And here's an example where a kid is not as desensitized as the adults. Mr. Raymond says you're sick because you're not like hardened like the rest of us. You see when somebody's treating poorly and you have a real reaction to it, a real feeling attached to that because you haven't been tainted like the adults who have seen this over and over again. If you look at horrible situations over and over again, maybe you can make a text-to-text connection or a text-to self-connection from a time where you've heard maybe a family member has been to war, or you've read something about our men and women who go to war and they just see all this awful stuff. They become desensitized to it. It's just like another horrible thing they see. That's kind of what the adults, or what adults as we get older, when we see and hear about horrible things, it's not as impactful anymore because we're used to it. Dill's not used to seeing somebody treated like Tom's been treated. So he has to leave, and then we get this awesome piece of information about Mr. Raymond, who everybody thinks is drunk, but he's really never drunk. He's carrying around Coke, drinking Coke out of the bag, because it's easier for people to believe he's drunk and hanging out with the black community rather than that he's doing it with all his wits about him. So there might be kind of like, maybe like Scout said, why are you doing that? Why are you pretending that you're drunk when you're not? And I personally think he like should own it. Like, if he wants to hang out with the black people, then I wish he'd be an example to the whites. But I think this kind of shows how taboo it was and how like off limits it was. Like, if you wanted to hang out with the blacks, you had to pretend you were drunk to do it. How ridiculous is that? So he gives us a glimpse into to what it was like. I mean, even the people who wanted to hang out with the blacks caught crap for it. How just awful. So they go back into the courtroom after having their conversation with Mr. Raymond, and Atticus has his closing statement. I mentioned the black and white comment. He's like laying out the facts, and he's like, this is black and white. Like, you know who did it. It wasn't Tom. And one of your assignments is to do a closer read of his final argument. So I want you guys to reread through that. You guys are, it's there in your springboard activity. You guys are going to look at a couple things: the logos, ethos, and the pathos. So those are techniques that that speakers use in their speeches. So the ethos is kind of like the appeal to the character of the person who's speaking, or the ethics of the person. The logos is the logic. Logos and logic sound the same. So just like logical, this is logically the conclusion you should come to. And then the pathos is the emotion, the appeal to people's emotions. You might see like those darn Sarah McLachlan commercials where they show all the animals in the cages and they're like, please donate. That's appealing. That's pathos. That's appealing to our emotions because we don't like to see animals dying, or hopefully you don't. So look through those more closely as you do that assignment and you analyze his closing argument there, and get that assignment up. As always, I'm here for you guys. So call me during office hours, email me, anything you need, I'm here. So I want you guys to feel confident and know that you've got some help. So get those assignments done and in, and we'll be on next week again to talk about more of the book. So take care, guys.